Well, welcome to Spiritual Rhythms for the Enneagram page. I'm Claire.
And I'm Scott. We're glad you guys could join us for just a little bit of time talking about breath prayer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so if you're familiar with the Enneagram, you realize that there are 9 styles, and if you are trapped in your type, you are on automatic, and you can use some practices to come home to what is most true about you. And what we teach in Spiritual Rhythms for the Enneagram is that you have an IQ, you have an EQ, and you have a GQ. Your intellect, your emotional intelligence, and your instinctual, your gut intelligence. And if you have practices that help you open to all that is yours, you'll find that when you go on automatic, maybe even during a stressful time, a holiday time. I don't know how many people we had at our house last week for dinner, but it was fabulous. We loved it. Several dinners, yeah. And yet, if I have a practice that can help me come home to myself, I won't just be in my automatic 3 style that gets me on my edge and has me moving too quick and not aware of the presence of God in my own soul. So breath prayer, we would say, is a way to match your theology with your physiology, that you are creating space to let your body respond to what you believe about God, that you are made in God's image. Hi, Jill. Welcome. We would love to have you ask any questions tonight, but I would say, the 9s look like the people that are the most chill, and they, they can have this really calming effect on the outside, but inside they can be pushing down some of their own feelings, their own realities. And yet they know, as the peaceful style, that they are made in God's image and that they want to bring God's presence to the world, but they need to be present to God and present to themselves in order to do that. So breathing, one of the most basic practices that we've been given by God. One of the first things we ever did when we showed up on the planet was breathe. And when we can take time to breathe, we know that neuroscience is telling us this. We know that any good therapist is saying, take a breath. Any good parent is saying to their child, stop, take a breath. And we really believe that breath prayer is a way to connect your theology, what you believe about God, with your physiology, which is what your body needs to do when you might just react. So for 9s, there we have some great breath prayers that can do that. And Scott, our resident 9, let's hear it for 9er.
Yes.
What are some of the breath prayer practices that help you, honey?
Yeah, well, I love what you're saying about kind of getting off of our edge and just trying to be centered. I think one of the attractive pieces of breath prayer for a 9 is when we are living in a healthy way, we really bring, the 9 is the peaceful person, we bring a regulating presence. So breath prayer, really one of the things it does for us is, for all of us, is it can bring a really regulating kind of presence and feel into our situation, into our day. So for a 9, there's different breath prayers in the book that we've given as suggestions. Some of the breath prayers that I love for a 9, one of the things we need to do is wake up. So, one of the prayers that I will pray just in the morning, breath prayer, just to kind of get centered for the day, is breathing in, God is engaged, and then breathing out, I am engaged. Just as a reminder, and just let that breath prayer be utilized with some repetition. And it just awakens, it just awakens you to the day as a 9 and gets you centered on I need to be engaged. I need to pay attention to engagement. I need to make sure that, I'm not avoidant in this day. So that's really helpful kind of to start the day and maybe throughout the day at different times.
That's beautiful. And so your God is engaged, breathing in.
Mhm.
I am engaged,
Yeah.
breathing out. And so practicing that even in the morning, attaching that truth about God and the truth about you, and you're living from your centered self, where
Right.
you're present to yourself and to God. I think that kind of practicing, it doesn't make perfect, but it does make permanent. And so if you're practicing that in the morning, how many minutes in the morning to begin with?
Well, just a few minutes generally for myself can really set the kind of attitude for the day internally. And then maybe go back to that at times during the day when I feel myself becoming distracted. And it just brings a good regulation and a good awareness, which is a really important thing for a 9, just to be awake to the day.
Yeah, and the thing I want to ask you is, does it just pray in you sometimes? Because
Sure.
if you practiced in the morning, does it show up at a time that can really help you?
Definitely. And then the other thing is then you mentioned kind of the hurriedness, the busyness of this time of year for all of us.
Or any time of year.
Or any time of year. It reminded me of a time a while back that I was actually going into the hospital, was having some different physical issues, went into emergency, and while in the emergency room, I tapped into one of the breath prayers that is in the book, and for the 9, it's simply, mighty God, because there was all this turmoil going on, people, trying to help, and I was in some pain, and I prayed, inhale, mighty God, and then exhale, Prince of Peace, and did that and you were there with me, but I did that just internally, and as I just did that and repeated that over with my breath, it brought kind of a peace to my interiority, and then that opened up a space for me to be able to pray for physical healing for myself. As opposed to just being all anxious and that about what was going on and possibly making things even worse for myself physically. So, you don't have to go to the emergency room to practice a breath prayer, but the point being, as you're saying, busyness, things can get chaotic in our lives, stress can start to happen. Just to have those breath prayers that we can tap into to bring this rhythmic kind of entrance of peace into our life and open us up to the goodness of God in a new and fresh way.
Yeah, and I really loved what you said, when we're really trying to be peaceful, or we're trying, trying, it just sets us up many times for disappointment. But training can rewire the way we enter into moments like hospital rooms, or difficult relationships, or a busy season, where you say, actually, I'm going to train my breath to be connected with my thoughts about God, so that when any moment comes up, I can immediately come back to stillness, because my breath can lead me there to the reality of God. As you said, mighty God, Prince of Peace. And what a beautiful gift for the 9. And so there's that part of it, celebrating the goodness of the 9, but then you gave us the other breath prayer that challenges the avoidance of the 9, or the need to be awake. And that is breathing in, God is engaged, I am engaged. And so beautiful for the 9s among us to be able to do that. And here's Jill. She says the breath prayer for her is, provider, provide for me your path. and she's a 2. And that's beautiful. And so I love that we're able to discover prayers that can not only celebrate the image of God, you've been created in God's image, but also the gift of being able to challenge the automatic responses that keep us from the best God has. So we'd like to guide you in prayer. So whether you're watching this live or you'll be watching it on the YouTube channel after we post it or later on the Facebook page, let's just take a moment and get comfortable in your body and know that the Bible talks about so many ways to pray. There's kneeling, there's standing with hands lifted up, there's head lifted or head bowed and hands folded. There's the laying on of hands when you pray for someone else, but just whatever way in your own body you want to express your desire to be open to God and be open to the work of God in your life. And begin to breathe. And just notice your magnificent breath, that this breath right here is a sign that God is breathing life into you. And that even as Jesus breathed into the first human being, God's own breath, God is providing breath for you now. And just notice your breathing. Notice how your chest rises and falls. Breathe in a way that helps you be aware of the reality that you're made in God's image. You are reverently and wonderfully made. God creating your respiratory system, God creating you from the soles of your feet to the top of your head. And that when we're awake and aware of the reality that God has made us and not we ourselves. The scripture even says we are God's temple, not made with human hands. And so take a moment to breathe in your magnificent breath. And if you have a breath prayer, feel free to breathe that prayer. But we'd like to guide you in the prayer for the 9 as a gift. So on the inhale, God is engaged. I am engaged. No avoidance here, no falling asleep, no numbing out. Breathing in. God is engaged. I am engaged. If your thoughts wander, just return to your breath. And this beautiful breath prayer, God is engaged. I am engaged. And then in this moment, just notice any stressful part of your life, something that feels like it needs God's peace, that you need God's peace. That while the world may be chaotic or so many unfixables in this world, you can pray this beautiful breath prayer of the 9.
Breathing in, mighty God. And exhale, Prince of Peace. Mighty God, Prince of Peace.
And what we know about you, God, is you are closer than our very breath. Amen. Amen. Well, that is a way to pray that connects your theology with your physiology, letting the truth of who you are created in God's image come to the truth of who God is for you. And we're just encouraging you in our work that we've done with spiritual rhythms of the Enneagram. We've given 25 pages for every Enneagram style to do some practices that are that simple, like as easy as breathing, in order for you to come home to what is most true about you, that you are God's own house. God lives in you.
Yes.
Yeah. So tomorrow we'll come back at 8 o'clock with the breath prayers for the one, and praying for you during this season and in all the seasons of your life, that you're able to breathe
Yes.
and receive God's goodness.
Yeah, live into the fullness that God has for you.
Aye.